This Late Night Linux Family podcast is made possible by our patrons. Go to latenightlinux.com/support for details of how you can join them. Support us on Patreon for access to ad-free episodes and early releases. That's latenightlinux.com/support. Hello and welcome to episode 112 of Linux After Dark. I'm Joe.
I'm Chris.
I'm Carrie.
And I'm May.
Welcome back all. It's the first episode of the year, which means it's time to look back at what we hoped would happen last year and talk about what we hope will happen this year. So Gary, you hoped that x86 would keep pace with ARM.
Yeah, so I feel like at this time last year, I'd basically given up hope at there ever being the ARM Linux laptop that I'd hoped for a few years ago. Yes, the M1 and M2 Macs work kind of, mostly, sort of, with SAI Linux, but I'd sort of shifted my view and had hoped that there would be x86 chips which would keep pace in terms of performance and power consumption with their ARM counterparts. And specifically, I'm thinking about the mid to high-end stuff. So M4 Pro and M4 Max are sort of my benchmark here.
And that actually turned out to be true with the AMD stuff, the Halo Strix or whatever they call it.
Yes, so I was specifically looking here at the AMD Ryzen AI Max Plus 395, which rolls off the tongue. And I'd forgotten this existed until we did a recent episode with Joe saying that this would be like his dream machine with a laptop with this CPU. And I looked at the benchmarks, and actually it is 20% faster than an Apple M4 Max 16-core, and is a 55-watt TDP versus a 64-watt TDP on the M4 Max. So that does actually seem pretty compelling just based on the CPU mark alone for multi-threaded stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know how much stock you can put in the TDP being actually true, but from some of the Phoronix benchmarks I've seen, it's at least comparable in terms of power.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with a machine that is that high-end, it's diminishing returns, isn't it? I'm not going to take a machine that is big, heavy, 15 or 16-inch display on a flight and expect it to last across the Atlantic for 8 hours. But equally, if I can get a couple of hours out of it whilst working at a coffee shop, that's probably okay. So if it's somewhere north of that, then I think I could probably settle for it.
But the question is, can you have it all? Because you can have it all with a Mac still.
Well, this is true. Like, I haven't seen a machine with that CPU in to see the build quality and everything else yet. So, yeah, the usual caveats apply, I guess, about that kind of thing. But if I wanted a powerful x86 machine running Linux, it's probably where I'd look, I think.
You're not going to run Windows, probably. You choose to run macOS and then Linux, wouldn't you? So I think with Tuxedo pulling out of their ARM project, and essentially the way it looks now is, I just think if you want to run ARM, you're going to run those two operating systems at the moment. So it's pleasing that an x86 manufacturer has managed to fill the void that was between the two when there was the first Apple Silicon chips. So it's a positive development, I think.
Yeah. I think if you get into the actual benchmarks and the battery life numbers and everything, you might still find that ARM comes out on top, but it's not like a massive gulf anymore. I think that it's at least in the same ballpark, and that is way better than I ever imagined. I thought that ARM was just going to pull away, x86 was going to be left in the dust, but no, seemingly, I mean, x86 keeping pace with ARM, that's what we're talking about, and that has happened, so excellent. May, you talked about the state of disk encryption features, and you wanted that to be better, and you wanted pausable per user encryption, and you talked about systemd, homed that should be able to do that, and then you talked about kernel snaps, but you were worried about that locking people out of building their own kernel.
Yeah, I think by and large nothing happened here. Did anyone else hear any news that I didn't? Because I think that this was a massive nothing of a year for that.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard of much. I mean, we've got the TPM-backed encryption stuff that's coming soon.
Well, that was already there. I mean, you've been able to do that in Fedora for ages now. Like, you just enroll the Lux decryption key into the TPM, and it's like 4 or 5 commands. It's not that hard.
Was it already in installers, though? Because I think you can do it in installers now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is having that in installers now is quite nice, but it's been possible for a really long time and wasn't really hard.
I don't think much happened here, but I'm excited to see more happen in the future.
Okay, fair enough. Chris, you wanted a viable, composable version of Debian, like Silverblue, like Bluefin, Bazzite, that sort of thing, but for Debian rather than Fedora.
Yes, I did. And it's sort of getting there. So Sean from Hybrid Cloud Show, Gary put me in contact with him. And there is a repository called Debian boot C. The bootable containers has helped this a bit. I did have a play with it, but it's a bit sort of RHEL Fedora land centric at the moment, which I had a little conflab with him about. So you can clone the repository, you can build a container, and then you can generate a bootable image. But you have to do that on a machine running SE Linux, for example. I tried to do it on a Debian bare metal machine, and it just wasn't working because it's AppArmor in that universe. So I sort of mentioned this to Sean, and he said, well, the ultimate goal is to remove the dependencies from the RHEL ecosystem. So no OS tree overhead, and use ComposeFS instead. So, I mean, the word viable is in the hope. I don't think it's something that I would be running anywhere production, but I do think if they can iron it out and make it a bit more universal, it's not impossible. The pace of adoption for the Debian project is famously slow and kind of my attraction to it. But having said that, I could see it gaining traction over time.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about being able to flip between stable testing and unstable, like you can flip between desktops, say, with Silverblue.
Mm.
And we're not there yet, but it seems that maybe you were a year too early with this hope.
Yeah, I mean, I could use the basis of this because it's just a container spec file, like an OCI. So you can create the bootstrap that you like, you can put the packages you like into that bootable container. So it's all kind of possible, but it's very hands-on. I'm using stuff that I do at work to do this. You're not going to go to every person, oh, there you go, just clone this repository and do that stuff. The roadblocks I hit were stuff you need sort of knowledge to troubleshoot, or if you're lucky enough to be able to PM Sean on Telegram, that kind of thing. But that is not viable. I'm not going to try and pretend that is a viable composable version of Debian, but I'd certainly be more interested in that than maybe things like Vanilla OS, which are looking to do the same goal, but it's like an A/B system, or they maybe keep changing what they're doing. So I think things are converging in a direction, but I think you're right. I'm a little bit too early on that.
Yeah.
Isn't it a good thing for us to be a year or so early with the hopes? Because these are the hopes, not the predictions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah, that is true. All right, well, I jokingly said that I wanted XFCE to work on Wayland, and then that actually came true with OpenSUSE and their Leap 16 release candidate that I tried, and it kind of worked. It wasn't fully functional, but it kind of worked, so I was very surprised by that.
They have some work on the compositors since then as well. I'm talking about the XFCE project, but it still remains the sticking point, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Slow pace again.
Yeah,
one of the
exactly.
reasons we love it, but also maybe its downfall.
But my serious one was battery life to be better on XFCE. Now, I feel really bad about this because at the time I'd been doing various testing of battery life, and I said I was going to do even more, and then I just never got around to it. So I just feel bad on that score. But I don't think anything has really changed, although I've not done the test, so I don't know. So I'm sorry to everyone for that. But as far as I can tell, nothing really has changed there, unfortunately. All right, let's talk about what we want to happen in 2026 then. Gary, what do you want to happen?
I'd really like companies to just keep out of controversy and just focus on making good stuff. I've had over the last 2 years several hardware purchases that were from companies that I really do believe in the mission of, like creating environmentally friendly or people friendly or repairable equipment, that have just been a huge disappointment in terms of build quality or support or stability. And then I've seen those companies get involved in all sorts of politics, or even going and sponsoring distros and things. And I'm just not interested in that when I'm sitting here with a computer or a phone that's just a paperweight. And I just really wish that companies would just focus on doing one thing and doing it well. If only there was some kind of philosophy that the software we all use every day had that may allude to it.
I feel like you need to say more words here because open source software is still inherently political.
Well, I was going to say, Gary, the thing is, you're starting from a political point with what you said, because the companies that you're talking about are starting from a position of taking a political stance because they're trying to rebel against kind of mass-produced, throwaway, e-waste generating paradigms. But why have they gone in certain directions? It's incredibly frustrating. You have a starting point of goodwill. You are trying to push back and you're doing all the right things that gets a real buzz of interest. And then suddenly, not only do you make bad decisions, when called on those bad decisions by the very people that have started to embrace you, you double down on the bad decisions and lose the faith of all those people, some of whom you've relied on the contributions of to even get your viable product working. I don't understand. So it's very frustrating.
See, the problem is, I think if this had been one bad purchase in the last year or 18 months, I think I could forgive it, right? Like we've all been there and bought a piece of tech that just hasn't been what it was advertised or hasn't been what we'd hoped for. This is multiple different companies with multiple devices across multiple different families that have just been a letdown. And I get it. It's really hard. But I just hope that they'll double down and focus on building a decent product and living up to the promises that they made to their users, rather than getting sidelined and making a million different devices whilst abandoning the ones they've already made. It's immensely frustrating because both of those pieces of tech have now ended up on the stack of tech and have been replaced with something that is inherently not repairable or not good for the planet because I just need something that works. It's really annoying.
I appreciate why you're not naming these companies. It's just more hassle than it's worth to mention them. But yeah, it sounds like maybe the laptop people should have stuck to the politics that they purported to have, and the phone people should have lived up to the software updates.
Yeah, and the support. Like, I have a support ticket that I opened with one of the two companies 6 months ago that I'm still got a response to. So, not great. Not great.
All right, Chris, your one is related to that.
Yeah, I hope the projects continue to be brave enough to turn down the bad cash. Recently, Python have revoked $1.5 million because they would have been backed into a corner, and the Debian project have been approached by another company I'm not going to name, saying, oh, this is a great collab, let's sort this out. And the maintainer said, no, you're openly against loads of stuff that Debian stands for, including what I stand for. No, absolutely not. It's really hard to do that, and you'll get criticized massively for doing it. You can't just live in a world where you think there's money trees. Obviously, you have to be realistic and pragmatic. But also, that doesn't mean you just keep ignoring problems to chase the money ultimately all the time. The only way that you're going to stem things like this from happening is by taking these stands. And it's not going to be universally popular. You'll get some people who suffer because they do need financial backing, but it's a poison chalice. So I hope that people continue to stand up for what their project is, because when you don't do it, it's a terrible idea.
This is quite naive though, Chris, because a lot of the work that goes into open source is done by companies that have contracts with various other companies. And a lot of those companies make ARMs, for example.
I believe a future discussion we may go into this topic in more depth, but the difficulty is that the attitude with which that happens, this country particularly, Great Britain, has a terrible track record with what you've just said, Joe. And the way that people deal with it is to be very British about it and pretend that they're not doing what they're doing for a living. That's bad. But at the same time, don't have shiny banners and videos. And then when people are like, it's a bad idea to not only, like, we appreciate that the world runs on filthy money a lot of the time, but don't also wave the dollar bills in people's faces and fire guns into the air, metaphorically. And that's what I feel sometimes that projects do. So yes, of course, you have to be pragmatic, but I think that Python particularly proved that you can be a very large project and still say no.
Yeah, you can still have some principles and some guts.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, obviously, if you always took the high line, you wouldn't have anything left, I don't think. That's just not the world we're in. I'm sure, email in, it's great. We get this all the time when we say stuff about this topic. But
yeah, you buy things off Amazon. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, but this is it, So as I say, we may discuss this in more depth in the future. I think it's a very grayscale topic, definitely not black and white. But I do hope it's important that projects with the level of visibility of Python take that stand when they can, I think is probably the most accurate summary.
Yeah. All right, May, your one's cheerful as well.
It might end up being if people actually do it. I hope that people move off of social media, finally. I think it's about time that we say that, the big platforms, all the way down to Blue Sky as even a smaller platform, but X and Facebook, it's not working. These algorithmic social media platforms just aren't working. And I think we can trace a pretty clear line from Cambridge Analytica to today and say, maybe we need to make some choices. I think that it's a really good time for either smaller or slower social media, or just no social media at all to become cool. I mean, look at me. I haven't had a social media account for years, and I'm actually doing a lot better. I highly recommend it. Even Reddit's a bit of a cesspit at this point.
Yeah, get your news and information from RSS feeds, old school style.
I don't know, pick some feed that you like and use that one.
Some of the platforms are eating themselves at the moment, like YouTube, for example. I don't know what's going on with their moderation. There's a hell of a lot of automated moderation, let's say. And I hope that that kind of self-destructs and young people especially turn away from all of this, despite the best efforts of these companies that are clinging on as they sort of shrink away. There has to be a paradigm shift at some point, you would hope.
Well, I mean, is that going to be forced by regulation in some of these cases? There are countries now that are just outright banning social media for kids. I feel like if I never had social media, I probably wouldn't have signed up for it now.
It sounds like an anti-smoking advert, that one, but this isn't propaganda. We're not being paid to say any of this,
Well, I think you're dreaming. I think that normal people still love social media, and there's no chance in hell that they're going to get off it anytime soon.
It's all right for those people to be wrong.
Yeah, I don't think literally every person needs to get off of social media. I think that, we have a small audience, and even if it becomes an awareness that this is actually really bad and worse than we thought, that's a start. That's a grassroots, right?
I suppose. But what my hope is, and it's not going to happen, but I would love it to, is for journalists and serious people to get the hell off Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Stop treating that platform with any sort of seriousness. And yeah, you might have thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers or millions of followers, but the only reason that is still going is because you've got all the media class clinging on to it, even though all their followers are bots at this point or not active anymore, and it's still being used to set the news agenda. And I just wish that it wouldn't.
I think it's really important to note that, most of these platforms at this point are bots or from the country they don't purport to be from. Musk accidentally showed us all that all these MAGA accounts are just from not America.
Yeah, exactly.
It's awful. People are being exploited for really stupid purposes at this point. I think that thinking about these things and knowing what the platforms are doing is kind of the first step to maybe undoing some of where we've gotten to. Cory Doctorow wrote a book on enshittification, which I think is a great read. And there's also a couple of other books that I really enjoyed on this topic. Evil by Design by Chris Notter and Irresistible by Adam Alter, which are both fairly old books at this point, considering that the topics have continued developing, but also pretty good foundational reads on this stuff. Just consider moving to slow social media, or not at all this year. I hope you'll do that.
All right. Well, I decided to keep it light, unlike you, Lyle. I really hope the Valve hardware is a success and that it means that more games come to Linux and Proton. You know, the easy anti-cheat problems, and is it EA who said they're not going to have any of their games working on Linux? I hope that some of that gets rolled back because of the success of the Steam machine and the Steam frame. And I also hope that the Steam frame is not too expensive so I can buy one, but I'm not holding out much hope on that front.
Yeah, I do think it's a positive announcement to be made. It's just a shame that they have to be hedging their bets on pricing, because it feels like the hardware bill of materials is they'd be shooting themselves in the foot to announce it with a launch price. They're a savvy company. It's very sensible to do what they've done, but it does leave you in a slight sense of limbo with hardware pricing variability, should we say, that they couldn't announce it with a slapped on headline price.
It is worth mentioning that we're recording this a month ago, so the prices are probably out there now.
Right.
And we could look like idiots, but it seems to me that you're right. They're going to wait as long as possible to announce any pricing because they just don't know.
So from what I gather, the Steam Deck was chosen with a hardware bill of materials that is razor thin in terms of margins because of purchases from Valve. I'm not so sure how much they can do that when they're doing a triple launch this time. It's a slightly different proposition. But it is exciting that this is going to be a Linux first games console, and it doesn't feel like the slight wet fart of the last time that they did this. They've gone in through a kind of iterative testing ground with the Steam Deck. They've built up, not only is SteamOS in a very healthy position, but you've got an ecosystem of Bazzite and things like that is really robust and healthy. So I think it's in a really good place for it to be a success, aside from the hardware pricing concerns.
Well, I hope that the port of Pistol Whip to the Steam frame is really good.
Well, I hope that I can install XFCE on the Steam frame and just see what else it can do, because I'm not going to be playing many, if any, games on it. I want to watch movies and just see what else it can do. But if it comes in at like £1,000, then I'm not buying it. I can't afford it. So we'll have to see.
I wonder what it's like, because I've never used any kind of headset before, but people say you have to build up a slight tolerance to it. And I get quite motion sick now, and that's getting worse with age. But I wonder what it's like to sit and try and use it like a productivity screen and then maybe watch some videos and stuff. I'd be interested. So I hope it's not too expensive for you to buy one, Joe, so that you can we can live vicariously through you.
Well, May, you're going to buy one regardless, presumably.
Pretty much.
So you'll have to let us know then.
Having eye tracking without also sending all of your face data to Meta sounds great to me.
Right, well, we'd better get out of here then. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Chris.
I've been Gary.
And I've been May.
See you later.